Hello, Brian, and you're calling in or joining
Hi,
us
Hayley.
from the Adirondacks.
The Adirondacks is a 6 million acre uh, state park, the first one in the country in the United States, but it's in upstate New York with over 2,000 lakes, 44 mountains, and just acres and acres and acres and acres of huge 100-year-old trees plus. So it's one of only two parks in the world declared forever wild. So there is an agency that oversees anything that you want to do, like put up a boathouse or, expand the footprint of your house. You have to get permission, cut down trees in front of your house. You have to get permission because they want to see if they can keep it as close to it was originally.
Amazing. And which are you on close to a specific lake, or where are you in
We're
terms
we're
of
we're right we're right on Tupper Lake, which
the?
is there's Tupper Lake. There are sister lakes of Lake Placid, Saranac Lake, and Tupper, all within an hour and a half of each other. And Tupper was a big lumbering town, and also has the first synagogue in the Adirondacks. Um, Point of interest: Teddy Roosevelt, when he was vice president, was mountain climbing in the Adirondacks, and McKinley was shot and killed, and they swore uh, Teddy Roosevelt into the presidency while he was on the mountain before rushing him back to Washington.
Amazing. I have
Yeah.
such an affinity for the Adirondacks. I think I first went to the Adirondacks ages and ages ago. I don't even remember the year. It must have been like 2003, 2004 when I first went to the Adirondacks. And I was just spellbound. And my first
Mm-hmm.
trip was around Lake Placid, Lake Saranac. And it just completely amazed me. And I think at the
It's
time, like, I was, gosh, I might have been like 22.
uh-huh.
Definitely in the party phase, but I remember it being one of those things where it was like, there's all of that, and
Yeah.
there's this.
Well, if we keep coming back for the month of July, and that's, this is our first summer. There's a lot of change going on for us. And this is our first summer of not being away for 6 months. For the past 25 years, we've had a summer home in Provincetown or here in the Adirondacks, but we sold this house, this magnificent Adirondack Lodge, to our nephew and niece and their three kids and two dogs. And so Ray and I are here for the month of July, but it was stressful for Ray last time we were here because there was so much he felt responsible for. And now we're here as guests. So each time he starts a project, I'll remind him, be careful. If your back gets hurt, we're both paying for it. So don't take on these jobs. It's not our place anymore.
You get to
You know,
call somebody.
well, oh, yes, and little stuff is easy, changing light bulbs or vacuuming or whatever. But the stuff where he's going to get down on his hands and knees and try to get under something is, he doesn't need to do anymore.
No.
And that's what really killed him last year. I think loneliness, because even in his good days, it's hard for Ray to participate in a lot of activities, physical activities. Uh, when we're here, because often family or friends are visiting and he sits back and the rest of us take off, it exacerbates his feelings of loneliness, which I don't want to have happen. So, he and I, this week prior to their arrival tonight, he and I have been skinny dipping every night, down the lake. We hold hands as we walk down this big grassy hill,
Oh no.
and then we jump in the water. It's real cold and we don't stay in very long. And then we hold hands walking back up the hill. So, he's steady and we have this intimate experience of touch, which is great.
Underneath nature's
Yeah.
sky.
Yeah. Yeah.
How magical and how blessed, you know?
Hayley, I had this talking about magical. I've been struggling with these to find my niche, here because we don't own it anymore. And the other day I was out with Lincoln, and there was this huge, easily over 100-year-old spruce tree. And I put my arms around it and smelled it and put my face to it. And the smell was extraordinarily sweet. I mean, I couldn't believe it. But there was this great tranquility, this that came from just being quiet and absorbing the energy of the tree as I whispered my, what it is that I was needing help with. And have you ever done that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love, and I find that I'm getting more confidence in it, being in nature and just being at one with nature. So I'm more than happy at this point to actually crouch down and put my hands on the ground
Mm-hmm.
and to feel what comes to the ground. And trees, it's very easy for me to connect with trees. It's a little bit more difficult to connect with the plants.
Yeah.
So now I'm trying to hone in on that connecting with actual plants by feeling their leaves. But and I think it's, the Adirondacks has a feel and it has this magicalness to it.
Mm-hmm.
I also find that up in Northern California, around Muir Woods and that area,
Yeah.
those forests there, has a magical feel too, but they're different.
Yeah. Are they different? They're different, huh?
Absolutely.
Because of the trees, do you think? The
I
trees are
think
different.
it's
Redwoods versus hemlock and spruce.
East Coast, West Coast,
Yeah.
the Crips and the Bloods. Um, I think it has to do very much with their location on Earth.
Mm.
And I think it has very much to do with the type of vegetation that's there. So the trees have different vibrations, the trees have different feels, but overall, at a very high level, the nature kingdom, has a magicalness that you can say, okay, this is nature, but this is more of a Adirondacks versus, Muir Woods, or even
South Florida.
South Florida, and further south than the Adirondacks in what we consider upstate New York, which would be like Westchester County, Eastchester, Putnam County. There's a lot of national parks around that area too, and those have a different feel.
Yeah. And this is state park versus national.
Yeah, which I think therein also has a different
Uh-huh.
feel too.
Yeah. Well, it's the feeling here is wonderful, but we're also surrounded by things collected for 45 years, that, stayed with the house. And I mean, I'm looking at a picture of a house we owned in Gloucester, 1982. So I feel comfort. It's not like going to an Airbnb where you have to get used to the furnishings. These are our furnishings, they're things that we've lived with for a long time. So there's a comfort that comes from that too. I just did a presentation with Sage of South Florida on intimacy. And, we often immediately assume that intimacy is sexual, but you can have intimacy with someone, going to the opera, and the two of you just get so into it that you're someplace no one else in the room is in, or having a spiritual discussion. It's just, there's an intimacy, or just even having dinner with someone and being completely open. I commented that intimacy requires honesty and openness
And vulnerability.
and vulnerability and trust, right? Otherwise, it's
And
just a conversation.
trust is an interesting word there, because I feel like there's this non-awareness of trust, because you're not thinking about, do I trust this person enough to be vulnerable? It's almost like a comfort that trust is so unconscious. Does that make sense?
I don't think it's a conscious decision to trust,
Yeah.
especially in intimate conversation that's taking place, often with somebody you don't know well at all. But because of your energy and the openness you're expressing to them, they jump in. The only bad side of it is that if they're not used to it, then they make assumptions about your relationship with them that aren't accurate. As I told the people on the Zoom call, I had one woman who I had a terrific evening with when I was working at her corporation. One night, because it was more than one session, went back to the hotel and we met up for dinner. And we talked and talked and talked. And when I was there, I was 100% focused. When I'm with you, you're the only person I'm with, right? And so that I was 100% with her, and she was just plunged. She jumped in and took advantage of this wonderful intimacy during the dinner. Well, a couple of visits after that to the same company, she came up to me in the cafeteria and said, every time you come here and don't seek me out, you stab me in the heart. I thought, oh my goodness, this is a little like, boiling rabbits on the stove. What, wait, what did I do wrong? What message did I give? I said, I'm really glad to see you. But I meant 100% of what I said when we were together. But then my mind goes to, whatever comes up next, and next and next and next. And, literally there are hundreds of people, hundreds of souls, thousands in my life. And each one deserves attention. Right now I'm corresponding with a 29-year-old deaf gay man in the Bible Belt. And when we're corresponding, he's got me 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Right. But then when I'm not corresponding with them, then, I see what's in my email box, or I see who's at the door, or I see what Ray wants to talk about, or if I'm talking with you, I'm not thinking about him, I'm with you. So how are you?
It's very interesting and very timely and synchronistic that we're talking about that, because that has been also something this week where it's been these sort of real contradictions yet clear things right in front, where I was once told that when people connect with me, they almost pee on me like a dog on a tree. I then become theirs. And it's almost like when I'm anywhere else with them, they're like, that's my Hayley.
Right.
And it happens with clients too, where they're like, you're mine, I can't share you with anybody else. And it is an interesting dynamic, because as soon as you try and be authentic self and like put some boundaries in, you're met with very harsh criticism. And it's
right.
They think they're getting a dagger to the heart, but when they're like, how dare you do that, you said we were friends. I'm like, never said we were friends. I just gave you my time because it was important to me. And them coming back with their sort of response to having a boundary sometimes feels like a dagger in my heart. Because then I'm like, what happened here? On the flip side of that, though, is being able to have those wonderfully intimate moments with people that are almost on the same page, that have no expectations, that are in that moment of complete gratitude for being in a moment and sharing it with another person who's completely in that moment too.
Yeah, I think what people, going back to you feeling stabbed in your heart, when people encounter someone who is, willing to completely open up, they can make an assumption that there's a power in that person that the person never loses. They're bigger than life. They're always going to feel that way. And that criticism doesn't hurt them, right? No matter what you throw at them, because they're wise and they can take it. And, they make a mistake there, because in order for me to be 100% with you, I have to be really vulnerable. I can't hold back thinking I'm going to keep asking Hayley questions that are intimate, but I'm not going to give any of myself, because, she might use it, or she might, or I might lose power.
Or
I
how
might
might
lose
she
status.
interpret it?
She might not think the same about me if I.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure the same is true for you. When your sessions, you're vulnerable. You especially as you allow yourself to channel energy from outside the room, from outside, this experience, you can't get in the way of it, right?
I, what's interesting in those moments where I am doing my work, I consider myself least vulnerable.
Least vulnerable.
Least vulnerable because that's not about me. I'm I'm an observer at that point, and it's very little about me. It's when I then get the kick to share my own story. Because
Okay.
there are client sessions where there will be that sort of conversation between them and their higher self or whatever that energy is. But then to make it real life or to give it some context, I'm also asked to share my personal experience, and that's when I get vulnerable. That's when I step
Yeah.
in like they could really think I'm weird here, or
Right.
they might
Well,
interpret
that's
this differently.
well, Hayley. That's been my being personal has been, my means of communicating, who gay people are for so many years. So I'm constantly intimate, constantly vulnerable,
Mhm.
because I feel as if that is how people are going to um, get past their fear of homosexuality or transgender, whatever it is that I'm talking about. Um, and so that's kind of my life. If people ask, what did you, rather than, I can take a counselor position, which is very different. But if I'm explaining, what it is to be a gay person, I don't, I use personal examples all the time for the education.
Do you think you can be neutral while being vulnerable and intimate?
Well, I'll tell you, um, sometimes when I would be telling my story and I would be watching the eyes of the people in the room, because I'm an empath. I read people. I could get so vulnerable that I would start to tear up when I talked about drinking the paint thinner. And I would see the expressions of being aghast, upset for me in the eyes of the people in the room. Then I know that I'm really at the line. I'm really at the edge. I've really made myself vulnerable. Uh, but there'd be plenty of times I'd be telling a story and I wouldn't feel that. I hoped that they would feel it, but I wouldn't allow myself to be that vulnerable at that moment because I don't want to lose control of the process.
And how do you navigate in telling your story or creating intimate moments? How do you keep it focused on the positive? Because a lot of the time when people hear, and using your example of the paint thinners, they immediately get stuck on that moment of you drinking the paint thinners and completely dispel who they're seeing in front of them right now. Like,
Right.
yeah, there was this awful moment, but my goodness, you survived and it led to so many great things too.
Right. So I'm not going to them as the person who has just consumed the paint thinner or is thinking about taking it. And before I ever get to that point in my story, they've already had time with me on stage. I haven't done this in a while because of COVID, but they, that's why I say the messenger is the message, because they're already looking at this very happy, emotionally healthy gay man, you know, who is in a relationship for 45 years and is just somebody you'd love to have it for dinner, right? So when I tell about the paint thinner, there's a sadness for me, but I don't. In my experience, they don't really. They're not. They don't come up and say, "I'm so sorry." What they come up and say is, "I want to make sure that my child doesn't go through what you went through."
Right?
So tell me how to avoid that from happening, right? Uh, and that's where what you just said is really important. So put the positive face on it for your kids at home. Put a book on the shelf with the word gay in it. Bring up the subject in a positive way, so that whether or not they're gay, they know they can talk to you about anything, because you've already indicated through your behaviors that you're somebody who is not afraid of this word, and therefore probably not afraid of any word, right? That makes sense?
Yeah. Do you think, and personally, when you look back on your path, do you look back and see and ever think to yourself that the paint thinner moment could have been avoided, should have been avoided, or do you think it's an integral part of your path?
I think it's integral. I think it was um, I think it was the final step I needed to take in order to make change in my life. That and it's dramatic. I don't know if I told you the whole story, but you know, this priest I was living with, who emotionally was unpredictable, and I found abusive emotionally, uh, and sometimes physically. Uh, we left the house, we had this fight, and I thought, I can't go back to my folks one more time. I keep going back to my folks, without us discussing what's going on. So, I went and drank the paint thinner out of the utility closet. And then I thought, oh, that was stupid. You drink some milk. So I drank some milk thinking I was going to neutralize it. And I thought, well, that was dumb, don't you want to die? So I drank some more paint. And then I took some pills. And I think I needed to do that in order to get to have this dramatic moment where I had my stomach pumped. And I was totally vulnerable then. I couldn't go any lower in my mind.
Mm.
And here were these strangers pumping the stomach of the son of a prominent General Motors executive. Not that they would know my father, but I grew up with privilege. And here's this, white privileged kid on the table, having his stomach pumped. And not only that, but I was a columnist and reporter for the Catholic Church. Chances are in this Catholic hospital, they might know who I was. So the fall was important to me, falling to have the courage to take everyone at work out to lunch one at a time and tell them that I was gay, and to do the same with my folks. That was a turning point, and I needed it. And it's an important part of my story, and it helps a lot of gay people and transgender people relate, because so many of us have attempted suicide. We have 4 to 5 more times more likely to attempt suicide than straight kids are. 50% more likely to run away.
And I think men generally right now are more likely to commit suicide than women too.
Yeah, I don't know anymore the statistics on that. You're probably right. I used to think that men shot themselves and women took pills, but that's changing too. But any rate, I don't think about suicide anymore, except with the whole issue of aging and getting to the point where you feel like, okay, that enough is enough. The quality of life is gone. I'm enduring or dreading days rather than actually living them. And I think we ought to have a right. I mean, when we own a pet, a dog, and we watch it, go downhill, we're the ones that make the decision at some point that enough is enough. It's in enough pain, And so the humane thing. Go ahead.
I do believe we have the right.
Yeah.
It's a divine right of being a soul. You have the choice of when you come in and which door and when you walk through the door.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I considered that a sacred decision.
it ought to be well informed. My decision was not well informed. And often suicide is an impulsive thing. The person has thought about it and thought about how they might do it.
And there's a lot of context that is
Yeah.
there in each one of those events and in each person that's
Yeah.
doing it. There's a lot of context that needs to be weighed in. Um, Regardless, though, I honor the decision that somebody has taken to reach a point and say, enough, enough. And I had a very dear friend who reached that decision. And she didn't tell me per se, but I was like, oh, I finally got it really early on when that she had made this decision. And it was her, like, it was so hard on her to try and stick with her decision while making everybody else happy.
Oh dear.
For context, she had cancer, and when it came back again, she was just like, no, I'm not doing this again. I'm not
Hmm.
going through that same route. I'm not doing it again. She can't tell anybody that. And it's almost illegal in the US to not accept treatment. You can be put on psychiatric holds if you decline treatment. So it was like being with her on that journey where I was like, I understand what you're doing. Maybe you should just tell the people around you that I don't want to do this. And she was like, nobody understands. And it was a tough journey, but she held on to it, and she definitely picked her day out, and she went in her way. And I think for
Hmm.
me, her way, she was always such an inspirational perspective to me, still is. But I think that was my first sort of very big wake up call into we do have a choice. We absolutely have a choice, and it's a tough one, and it's not easy in this day and age, but there is a choice.
Hayley, what is your feeling about uh, the soul? I mean, in sometimes the ego is making the decision, right, without consultation with the soul. Uh, is it, can the soul decide that it's ready to be released?
Yes.
And what happens after it makes that decision?
It does the same thing every other soul does.
There's no change in.
There's nobody on the other side going like, was your death honorable? No, death is death. Death is honorable. If it's
Mhm,
honorable for one person, it's honorable for another person.
mhm.
So, on the other side, the soul is the soul. It's still love. It's still light. It obviously has like like karmic lessons and all that kind of stuff. But the soul is still the soul.
And if we choose to take our life, is that a guarantee that we're going to be coming back and working on another lesson? Would somebody at the highest vibration of life take their own life?
I do not believe so. It is not my experience that somebody at the highest vibration would take their life. Um, it is my experience to date that those I've encountered that have taken their lives were at a lower vibration. Um, Yet they weren't, like, when we're speaking about lower vibration, it's not that they were dumb, it's not that they were stupid or anything like that. It's just, their decision to say it's enough is still honorable. I consider that still an honorable decision, still requires my honor. Um, but it is of a lower vibration. It is a vibration of, and again, this is just in my experience, what I have seen. It is a decision of, let me give this another go when I've got better tools.
I
So
think
they
there's
know
a
they're
different.
coming back.
For me, there's a huge difference between choosing not to have chemotherapy and radiation and choosing to take your own life. Those are two different issues for me
I
because if I was, one is just saying, look, this stuff you're putting in my body is just killing me. I don't want to spend the rest of my life hanging over a toilet because you think it's going to give me 6 more months to live. Yeah, there's 6 awful months. I don't want those 6 months. That's different than me hanging myself or taking pills because for whatever reason. And I'm not putting that down. I'm not saying that taking the pills, but I do feel that a person could be at their highest vibration and decide not to uh, go any more treatments.
I think you make a very clear distinction there. There's the soul's highest vibration, and then there's the human's highest vibration.
Well, what's the human? I don't know the human vibration.
So the soul's highest vibration is unconditional love and light.
Right.
The human's highest vibration could be just reaching a point of hope. It could just be, I just want to be able to survive. That could be one human's highest vibration. For another human, thriving could be their highest vibration. So the distinction there on the human's highest vibration, it's still a choice. And I do agree with you that choosing declining intervention, medical intervention in this case, is very different than what you and I look at as suicide. However, there are many people out there that do not see a distinction.
Well, one could argue, Hayley, that deciding not to do acupuncture and Reiki and healing massage is, if you decide not to do that, that's suicide too. Just like not having radiation and chemotherapy. I think one is Eastern, one is Western. Both are healing modalities. And you've said, look, I don't want to do anything that's going to make me feel miserable. Acupuncture will be fine and Reiki will be fine, but I'm just not going to do the chemotherapy anymore.
And I think that's the beauty of our free will. We
It
get to
is.
make decisions based on what feels good for each one of us in a unique way. And that's where I kind of find the honor even in suicides. And suicide is a very interesting subject. And I do realize that I have a very different take on suicides. I see them very differently than many people do. And I hope that as we go through a transition, a transformation, we might start to understand suicide and open our hearts and our minds into suicide as much as we do into other avenues of life.
Okay, so this is just you and me talking. Whether or not you share this, as a recording is another issue. But so if someone in a therapeutic setting said to you, I'm going to take my life, you don't feel that you're bound to notify authorities that this person is going to take their life.
I have been in situations where I have been the decision maker. Do we notify authorities or not? I will always notify authorities.
You will.
Uh-huh.
Even if it's against the will of the person you're speaking to.
If it's against the will of the person I'm speaking to, they need the authorities more than anybody else.
Yeah.
Then they're in that space of ego. They're not making a clear decision. They're doing something because they're in a moment where they just can't see their way out. So they need, they need help. If they're threatening to be a harm to themselves or anybody else, and in that, creates trauma and drama, absolutely call the authorities. I think they need to be notified. And I think, there needs to be more of this thing where it's okay to notify them. Because, again, in the cases, I think in just the last year, I participated in 3 different individuals that required me making a decision, call the authorities.
Mm.
In each one of those cases, the authorities' response was, we can do nothing.
because the person
Do
hasn't asked?
nothing until the person hurts themselves or somebody else. And I think we have a whole different topic and subject. I think we have a massive issue with our um, support for people that need help. We don't support people that need help. We support ignoring them and brushing them down so nobody has to deal with it.
Well, again, this is not, you and I, our discussions are organic. They just sort of go where they're going to go. But I don't think that uh, I don't think we should put that on the healthcare system, government, state. I really feel that it's a friend and family responsibility to be there for somebody who's going through a tough time, but listening to them, really listening. What is going on for you? Not you shouldn't be having these feelings, but what are your feelings? And are they consistent? Is this new? Uh, how have you thought about the impact it might have? We had as our guest Bill Konigsberg,
Mm-hmm.
remember, who wrote the book The Bridge, which is about suicide. And a friend of mine who talked to me about suicide and thinks about it often, I recommended the book to. And he read much of it and said, thank you. One of the things that it helped me with is realizing the impact it would have on the people that I love. Because often when we're thinking about suicide, we're not thinking about the impact on others. What do you think about all that?
It's a heavy thought.
Well, and the fact that we're willing to talk about it, whether we're right or wrong, doesn't matter, because this is just us.
And I think knowing too, one of the things about being intimate and vulnerable with you is that we're open to learning, and what may be my belief today may not be my belief in 5 years' time.
Mhm.
It's such a there's so much context there. So I'm going to take an example of two examples that I've encountered and that I see more common, because a lot of the people that I help have at some point had at least one suicidal thought. In my experience, in my life so far, there have been, at a very high level, sort of two distinct streams of thought when there is the serious suicidal tendency or thought process. The one thought is, I can't do this, I've had enough, I'm exhausted, I need to get out, it's better off for everybody if I go. That is one sort of stream of thought that I see very often. The other stream of thought is more of which I consider more ego-based, which is, I want people to know that they hurt me through this decision. I want people to suffer because I did this.
Oh,
I know that if I'm doing it, I'm going to hurt people, and I'm glad that they're going to be hurt.
that's not a very high vibration.
It's not a very high vibration, but that is also a huge driver of the that I've seen in terms of people reaching a suicidal moment. In death, I think, regardless of how death happens, whether it's reaching a point in old age where you're like, I'm ready to go, or you're critically ill and you don't want to go through this massive treatment that may not work, or it may actually be even more harmful. Should you consider others' feelings in your decision to face death? I think first we belong to ourselves before we belong to another. And I think
Well,
ultimately
if I,
we have
okay, please finish. I'm sorry. Were you done?
yeah, I was just going to say that, in that decision of facing death, it is a very personal decision. Death only happens to one person. it impacts that person's life far greater than the people on the outside. So that's where they really need to be sitting in their heart to see, is this truly what I want? And then once they've come to peace with that, then start thinking about, if you have the time, if you have the capacity to think about the impact to other people.
Well, it depends, Hayley. Ray and I have been together for 45 years. If I got cancer and we've talked about it in advance. I've said, I just don't want to take chemo, but the discussion doesn't have any meaning because it hasn't happened. I had cancer, prostate, but that was minor stuff for me. If I was in a position to say, I just can't do it anymore. I don't want to do it. I feel I have a responsibility to talk with him about it because, as you have noted, long-term relationships, if there's love involved, creates a third person. And that's the relationship. That's the Brian Ray. And my choosing to not take radiation or chemotherapy treatments impacts Ray enormously, right? Because suddenly the Brian Ray is not Brian Ray anymore. It's gone. It's dead. And Brian's gone too. And what am I left with? Except a lot of responsibilities that I wasn't bargaining for, because I thought he was going to live, till longer than I was going to live. So I personally, and this is just me, I would feel, the obligation to say, we need to talk about this. And I want to hear your feelings about it, because I don't want to make decisions without taking in consideration how it impacts you. But I also want you to hear from me, why I want to make this decision, because, you may think it's selfish on my part, but I want you to know why, from my perspective, it makes sense. Can you resonate with that?
Absolutely resonates. And I think that if you're in I think often when you have that clarity of mind to understand what you really want and have thought through it yourself so that you can express it, you'll be quite surprised about the impact from others.
Especially if they have time to think about it. As you say, what I think today is not what I'm going to think tomorrow necessarily. I think the first reaction can be from the ego that says, no, you can't,
Leave me.
But then you sleep on it, right? And the soul whispers in your ear all night, you got to think about it from his perspective. You got to, what would you do if you were in his shoes? And, then you can come back to the conversation. I'm not saying that I owe it to my sister, best friends to let them be part of the decision-making, but I do think they ought to be made aware of the decision.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about going to the human's highest vibration, I think that when you are in a place of being able to sit with yourself and understand what feels good to you and then be able to express that, I think then you're reaching that highest vibration of death has a completely different meaning now. Death is actually a conversation. It's not something that you hide. And I think that's a much higher vibration than the suicide. Because I think the suicide is very much hidden in, I can't talk to anybody about this.
Right.
Nobody will understand. They're just all going to talk me out of it and tell me that, I should be thankful or grateful or you'll get through this. Very different vibrations. One definitely higher. Without judgment. If that's even possible in that statement.
Well, I think our wisdom about this comes from our experiences with it. And not that I have any great wisdom I'm only wise about what I did. and in reflection after all these years about what was going on, was it a serious, did I really want to die? No. I was scared and I felt trapped. Often, sometimes suicide is an attempt just to get out of a situation you don't know how else to get out of.
You can't see. And I think that's fear, is when you're in fear, you can't see. You can't see your way
Mhm.
out of it. And it's panic. It's sheer panic. And you go into a space where you're just like anything, anything at all. Um,
Mhm.
so it's a scary place. It's definitely, and you know, my, I've definitely had suicidal thoughts um, prior to more of a suicidal experience. And when I look at the difference in those thoughts, they were definitely like, there wasn't a whole lot of thought into them,
Mhm.
you know. But when I had my thing where I very actively chose to die, I was like, I'm done. And I had two people very clearly say to me, like, you've clearly made this decision. You're like one decision away from staying alive. You need to make a decision now. And I found out through different forms of therapy, mostly Eastern therapies and energy therapies. I had something I completely disassociated from, something I actually didn't have a whole lot of awareness of. I got the full memory in like 5 seconds, just the entire thing came while I was lying on a table, and I shut up and I was just like, did this happen? And I got the full yes, it happened. So when I think I was 14, I had surgery, and in that surgery, I died. For about 20 minutes. I was out.
Mhm.
And it all started making sense for me as I got these things. It totally made sense. I was supposed to go in for surgery where the scar should have been this big, and was a very simple surgery. I came out and spent 3 days in high intensive care. The scar was my entire abdomen. I had tubes in my nose. I had heart monitors on. I had a respirator. And I was just like, what is going on here? And nobody would tell me.
Hmm.
Nobody told me. So when I had this memory of seeing everything and then also having Archangel Michael and Metatron walking with me, and then me making the decision to come back, I was so freaking angry. Like the rage at myself for choosing to come back when I had an out.
Mhm.
Why would I come back? I spent a month in such rage. Such, I can't even, like, there's not even words or colors that I can tell you about this rage about making the choice back then to stay when I could have gone and avoided so much. Um, and I made the decision. I'm done. Screw the story, screw the universe, screw like the soul. I'm done. This is a bad joke. And in that decision to be done, my body shut down within a week. My body started shutting down.
Mhm.
And I
This
was,
is post. This is post surgery.
this
This
is,
is at.
surgery happened when I was, I think, 13 or 14.
Uh-huh.
Was when I was 40. 39, 40 is when I got the memory back and
Oh.
the full experience. And that was when I was like, I was 40 when it came back. And that was when I was just like, done. And that was in the middle of a whole lot of like, a lot of therapy, a lot of getting back things that I had disassociated from. And I was just like, I'm done. No more. Um, and I was, the two people that I was seeing at that time, one was my functional medicine doctor who was still trying to heal my body. And then I was also seeing a therapist, and who's more of a spiritual therapist.
Mhm.
And she's a doctor of psychology and psychotherapy, but she's also integrated spiritual side. And they were both like, your body's done. You need to make a decision. If you want to stay, you need to make a decision. And it was there was where I had to sit in my heart and be like, okay, I know I'm really mad. What do I actually want? Like in my heart, what do I actually want? And my decision was to stay, but it was that was the closest I've got to suicide.
So if I can repeat the story just so that I'm clear, you had surgery at 13 or 14, and it was supposed to be minor. You woke up and major stuff had been done, and you were in intensive care for 3 days. And then 30 years later, you had a very clear memory of where you were when you were gone for that period of time. 20 minutes, did you say?
Yeah, I think it was 22 minutes that I was out of my body.
Okay. So did they call you? Did they declare you dead?
I have no idea. I have
They
no
won't
idea
still.
what happened.
Okay. Okay. So, and
I
so
mean,
no one would, not
no,
even your folks later?
nope.
Your folks later wouldn't tell you?
I honestly don't know if my parents knew. I don't know that they told my parents what, because it was just my mother with me. I don't know if they told my mum what happened. I think it was completely covered up in the surgery.
Do you think they made a mistake? Is
Yes.
that?
No, they
Oh,
absolutely they cut the hepatic artery.
okay. So they made a mistake in surgery. And
Very.
then when you were 40, you got really angry that you made the decision to come back
Mhm.
because you remembered after all this time your experience of encountering Michael, and I don't know the other,
Metatron.
Metatron.
It's kind of like
Where
the
am I?
he's a like Metatron is an archangel, but he's not one of the Elohim archangels.
Okay.
Elohim.
So you remembered encountering him. Did you know about him before you encountered him?
When I was 14, did I know about him?
Yeah.
No.
So it was later that you put a name to the face or the being.
Mhm.
And so at age 40, you were so angry about what happened to you and the fact that you had chosen to come back and you could have missed these 30 years of upset that you allowed your body to shut down.
Mhm.
And at that age, you really had to make a decision again, make the decision to stay versus to leave. What made you stay?
I trusted that 14-year-old. If that 14-year-old had the courage, the heart, the faith in me to come back at 14, I wanted to trust the 14-year-old.
Well, that's interesting. That's great. And so how long did it take your body to come back?
6, 7 months?
Okay. And is that when you left your marriage
No,
and your job on Wall Street?
no, that was
Well
well.
after.
Mhm.
Oh, it was
Yeah.
well after.
Yeah, so I left my marriage in 2016. The family, when separated, left the family, I guess, in beginning of 2018. This happened in the end of 2018 into 2019.
So you left the marriage, left your family, you've decided you'd had enough of the family thing. And so this decision was post both of those.
Mm-hmm.
So
This
you didn't really feel liberated by the end of the marriage or by leaving the family.
no, no. I had more questions than anything else.
Yeah.
I had more
And
questions.
you were
That's
you
why
were
I went into
coaching
therapy.
you were coaching people at the time?
Oh no, I was not doing anything at the time. I was 100% focused on my physical and mental health.
Okay.
Yeah, there was, I think, in that 3-year period where from I want to say like mid 2017 up until the end of 2019, I maybe coached 3 people.
Oh,
Most of the time, I was working on my, like, getting my act together, like really focusing 100% on physical health. Then, once the physical health came back up, I focused on the mental health. Had a little dip in the mental health when I had this recollection, had to refocus on the physical, and it was at the end of 2019 that it all came together.
okay. So thank you for sharing all of that. That's informative to me. I mean, you and I are friends, but each thing we share about ourselves helps create the intimacy that we um, hunger for.
Mhm.
I, so it was at the end of 2019 that you felt things had come together, and 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 then and decided that you were really glad you had made the decision to live.
I think I'm trying to remember when that moment where you're like, I'm really glad I made that decision. I'm trying to think when that moment occurred. And I think that moment occurred last year in maybe like April, May. And I breathed. I remember breathing and just being like, it's going to be okay. You're like now on your way. You're okay now. And I remember that moment being like, this is what the 14-year-old knew. And thought and knew, like, had that sort of like, just get here and you'll be okay.
So that sounds to me like a hero's journey,
It's
right? Part of it.
mm-hmm. It's
So
ongoing.
hey, yes, for all of us, regardless of our age and the amount of experiences and the amount of the hero's journey is I've learned in myself is just it's more than just my coming out and helping people. So Hayley, are you clear about what your light is?
Yes.
Can you, I mean, for me, can you articulate what that is? What is your light?
My light is to heal my heart and return to unconditional love and light. Unconditional love. That is my path. That is my purpose. That is my will, and my intention for this life. How that translates when I impact others, I am a humble example of how you can return to unconditional love, how you can heal your heart and come back to unconditional love. So I teach people the way, I can give them the tools that can help them find their way. I can see, in my connection that I'm much clearer and my heart is clearer. I can see the way for them and point them at least in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
So that is my life. But it is I think, so often we expect our unique light, our unique purpose to be of service of somehow to the world
Mm-hmm.
first. I have come to believe that our unique light is healing ourselves, bringing our heart back to unconditional love. And our journey of that is how we are in service to the world, to others, to the planet.
How do you know, Hayley, from your experience, when you have succeeded in giving your heart unconditional love? What are signs of that success?
I'm still learning.
Yeah.
I think it's still redefined, but as I've gone along the way, the ease that comes, the ease in surrendering and being able to say, I'm okay with that. Or let me take a moment and get the context. Like having those, being able to surrender and easily say, I need time to get context here. And the context doesn't come from other humans, it comes
Mm-hmm.
from my connection to everything. everything.
So it's creating boundaries for yourself that can change, but that are protect you. Uh, I mean, loving oneself is creating space for oneself that in which you feel safe and valued. Am I right?
Where I'm at now, it's not where I feel safe and valued. It's where I feel wholly myself, where I feel confident. Not that's not the right word. Where I feel that I'm wholly myself, I am wholly embodying the light. So myself no longer means me. Myself means everything that comes together to create this path and to help me be on the path. So me is my guides, me is my clients, the service that I do, all of that is me. It's that
And
connected play that helps me be the best version of me. And in that happening, I can then, without any effort and any sort of thought, naturally be of service to all those around me, regardless who they are.
how often, Hayley, when you're working with people, do you tell the story that you've told me about uh, um, the decision you made and the anger and the new decision, and that that your light is about? How often you share those details with people?
When it's necessary and appropriate, and it's not with everybody.
Okay.
Um, it's when, like, those two conditions, when it's necessary and appropriate.
Okay. So going back to how our conversation in the very beginning, and I don't know how much time we have
We're actually
left.
a little bit, we always have such
Oh,
great combos.
yeah. Um, is it when you do share the details of your life that you feel that it's more likely that you're going to feel stabbed by somebody who uh, is unappreciative or making demands that uh, are unreasonable?
No,
No.
I think when I am more concerned with being guarded is when I feel more concerned with what people are going to do, say, what they're going to think. And when we were talking earlier about, you come to this point where those intimate moments are shared and equal. I feel like I have far more of those moments when the sharing happens,
Mhm.
where I don't even have a second thought about, oh my God, what are they going to do with that information?
Mhm.
It's
Yeah, it doesn't matter what they do with it.
it's just at that point it's completely neutralized, if that makes
Uh-huh. Right.
but it's in the moments when I am not necessarily sharing and I'm on a circle call where there's a circle of people and it's in those things where I'm always like, what are they trying to get?
Mm. Mm.
Like what that's where I find myself it's harder for me to be vulnerable.
Mhm.
Where
Okay.
I'm much better one on one than
Hmm. Hmm. Well, I was going to say also that if you are in a circular call, and we can wrap this up, and use it or not, doesn't matter to me. I loved our time, and I appreciate your vulnerability, and it means a lot to me. Uh, that you're more likely to get people who feel that she's mine when there's more than one person involved in a
yeah.
situation. Yeah.
And I think it again when you're on the hero's journey and you're moving along your path and you're getting I shouldn't say you when I'm moving along this path and reaching a place more where I'm more heart focused, more concerned with love, I tend to attract those kind of people too. So the number of instances where I'm around people that I have to be guarded is minimal now. It really
Good.
is. And I think that's part of the beauty of the hero's journey.
Mm-hmm.
There's wonderful sweet spots along the way.
There sure are.
And I think we get tested too. Absolutely, there's going to be these
Oh
random
my
things
goodness.
thrown in my way.
On
Like, and you think you're hot, let's see how you're doing.
and and you can't prepare people for it. You go through these experiences and you think, wow, I wish somebody had told me that, but I wouldn't have listened because I was younger and had other things in my mind.
Well,
You
and
know,
even now, I mean, I'm well aware, like, even at this stage of my journey, and I'm sure your stage of your journey, you still get tested. You still get those little things with,
oh,
it's like, so you think you got it sorted
constantly.
out?
But I'm better at responding. There's less drama in my life.
Yeah.
I think that's when people see less drama, then they know they're vibrating at a higher level, and that their wisdom is accumulating.
I have a word for that, which is actually my word for the month of July, and that
What's
word
that?
is resilience.
Resilience. Yeah. Keep at it. It's
Yeah.
like those balloons you knock over and come right back up, right? Did you ever have those as kids?
The hero's journey, that resilience gets brighter and brighter and brighter
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
you continue on. The resilience isn't this hard slog. It's this, oh man, I got up and I'm bigger.
Yep. Yep. Well, all right, my
Yeah.
friend. I love
Amazing
you.
chat. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful week in the Adirondacks. Soak it up.
And if it's too crazy next week, I'll let you know.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of,
Yes. Let me know.
but yeah, otherwise we're scheduled, but we'll see.
Amazing. I can't wait. All these
You
great
too.
people. Lots of love to you. We'll chat
Bye,
soon.
Hayley.
Bye.
Love you. Bye-bye.